This is Health Call Online, the place for extended versions of interviews you hear on our weekly radio broadcast, the Health Call Radio Hour, which is now offered to stations around the country in national syndication. Our guest today is Matt Zeman. He is the author of a book called Psychedelics for Everyone, a beginner's guide to the powerful medicines for anxiety, depression, addiction, PTSD, and expanding consciousness. So I'm eager to learn more about all of this. Matt, I know absolutely nothing, no personal experience with psychedelics, so I'm going to tap into you for a lot of that. But let me get started here with just what's the key message, the takeaway you want us all to receive from your book?
I think the key message is that while not everybody needs to take a psychedelic medicine is positively impacting many, many people. So understanding how the medicine works, what these options are, and how this can impact you, a loved one, or how you vote is important.
So typically our guests on this program are physicians, PhDs, researchers, and I don't think you slot into any one of those categories. What really moved you to write this book?
Yeah, so for me, it started with a personal experience about 4 years ago where I was invited to participate in a guided psychedelic medicine experience. And it completely changed my worldview. I reconnected with my mom, who died when she was 49. I had some really profound insights. And I left that experience saying, I want to learn more. I went back to school and got a master's in psychology and neuroscience and did a deep dive into this world. And I wanted to create a book that anybody could read, that wasn't too woo-woo, wasn't only for people with a medical background, and then it was accurate, it was medically reviewed for accuracy.
So, I've heard that phrase a lot. It totally changed my worldview. It was, an amazing experience. I keep reading that from people who've been down this path. Can you describe for me what that feels like?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different experiences I can talk about. On this first one, reconnecting with my mom and understanding or coming to this idea that maybe she's not gone forever. Maybe she's just in a different plane, and that I can connect to her and pull her energy through to me and into my kids. Okay, that was beautiful. Then realizing I've been afraid of dying. She died so young. I was afraid that I was going to die young, and I think I made a number of choices in my life that were related to that. So then, not being afraid of dying, it was a big lift. The other major thing was just feeling incredibly safe and loved, and it was almost a thing like, okay, wow, I feel really safe and loved right now, which then was followed by, oh my gosh, I normally don't feel safe and loved. And then it was, well, how do I get more of this into my life? And those are just some of those first ones from that first experience that were really changed the way you think, changes the way I feel, and changes the way I interact with the world.
Well, I know that there is research underway at Yale University, Johns Hopkins University, institutions all around the world trying to understand this better. What's your understanding of what's happening in our brain to create those kind of emotions?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the easiest way to understand this is as we get older, we all get into repetitive thinking patterns. So we start thinking the same way. And behind the scenes, our neurons are firing the same way, literally firing the same way. When people have a psychedelic experience, a few things happen. Your default mode network is quieted down. So think of kind of that inner narrator in your head, the one that's telling you this is good, this is bad, you're not good enough, this is whatever. That gets quieted. Then these neurons start firing together that are not the way you normally think. But it might have been how you thought when you were a child or when you were younger. So all of a sudden these neurons are firing, and then it triggers the ability to be like, wow, I haven't thought like that in a long time, and now I'm thinking about this view of the world differently. And then the third thing that happens for many people is there's some type of a spiritual connection. They feel more connected to a higher power, whatever that is for them, and that makes them again feel safe, loved, connected. That everything's not futile. So you put all of those things together, and you take somebody with depression, anxiety, OCD, an eating disorder, a substance use challenge, and really great things can happen. But great things can happen for someone who is just pursuing this for religious reasons, or someone who is just wants to optimize to become the best version of them that they can be. So lots of different ways to find your way to this medicine.
So are we talking here about neuroplasticity, brain plasticity, sort of a rewiring of the brain, that concept?
Absolutely. I mean, in many of these medicines, you're going to start growing more neurons. You're going to increase your synaptic strength. All of those things are happening as well as neurons firing that just don't normally fire together. And many, many more neurons firing than normally fire.
So I have read that actually pretty commonly people say they've been severely depressed, traditional medications don't work, they do 1 or 2 guided therapy sessions using psychedelics. They have significant improvements that are long-lasting. One study I saw said 67% of participants had improvements that were persistent, lasted months beyond the therapy, and they were able to get off their traditional medications. If it's that effective, why do psychedelics still have such a negative image?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. So back in 1970, the Nixon administration passed the Controlled Substances Act. So all of us born from like 1971 until today, we've lived our entire lives in a prohibition. And we've only heard what the government and the media has told us, which is all drugs are bad. They don't have any medicinal purpose. You're going to get addicted. They're going to fry your brain. Stay away. So combating 50 years of misinformation is hard. But now we have over 300 academic institutions studying and publishing research on psychedelics. And we're seeing things. The study you just referenced is a phase 3 clinical trial for people with a post-traumatic stress disorder, treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress disorder. Mm-hmm. And after 3 sessions with MDMA, 67% no longer qualify as having PTSD. That's a tremendous number. I think we're finding that so many of us, we've only known about antidepressants, and they don't work in upwards of 40% of the people that are prescribed them. That's also not ideal. And even when they do work, they come with some pretty tremendous side effects. So people want something new, and there's been a medicine that's been in our country's back pocket for a long time that academia and public opinion is now becoming married. And we're seeing both sides of the aisle supporting this. It's hard when you talk about veterans and first responders and victims of sexual assault to say, oh, it's a Democrat thing, it's a Republican thing. No, everybody supports this. So I think that's why the FDA has given breakthrough therapy designation to both MDMA and psilocybin, and we expect those both to be legal in the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, yeah, already the state of Oregon is moving forward, licensing psilocybin clinics, and we're going to talk about that experience in a moment. I know the state of New York is moving forward and proposing legislation. So
Colorado
it's a wave. It's having a moment.
Colorado just did a ballot initiative where it'll decriminalize. It's passed. 5 psychedelic medicines are decriminalized, and they're creating a framework for a legalized psychedelic medicine industry for adults 21 and over.
And you are involved in an enterprise. I know that you're an entrepreneur in your background. And you're doing home ketamine therapy. Tell me how that's going to work.
I am. So we have a business called Happy with 2 Y's, happy.me. And it's connecting members to prescribers who have licensed prescribers in their states or doctors to connect them with ketamine, and also connecting those members with guides to help them prepare for their ketamine experiences and then integrate afterwards. And then also we add a layer of digital therapeutics, so activities on a daily basis that are evidence-backed, that keeps the learnings going and changes it from being kind of a one-time experience to an ongoing happy habit creator. So super positive. We launched in Florida this month, and then we expand across the country from there.
We are going to talk about all the different forms, or at least a few of the major forms of psychedelics in a moment. Give me a sense of where do you think, when we look back at this 3 to 5 years from now, what's your vision of how we're going to be integrating these in the treatment of all the conditions we've discussed?
Yeah, so I mean, it's wonderful that everybody in every state right now has access to ketamine. It's the only legal psychedelic available. People can go into a clinic and have it delivered via IV or intramuscular, or even nasally. They can use one of these telehealth companies like Happy and have it delivered via these sublingual lozenges. In 2 years, we're going to see MDMA widely available, and people with treatment-resistant depression and PTSD will have access to that, and then psilocybin shortly thereafter. So things like, think about, imagine a parent or a grandparent with a terminal illness. Right now, if they're not already on an antidepressant, it's 6 to 14 weeks every time they try to figure out if one's right for them. That's a long time. A psychedelic medicine will work in hours. That's a huge difference. The depression and anxiety lifts immediately. The feeling of connectivity works immediately. So you can see psychedelic medicine being used not just for the person in the terminal state, but then also their family who's struggling with incredible feelings of hopelessness and sadness and going to miss their loved one. They could also use a lift in depression and anxiety. But it seems reasonable to say they need it for a little period of time. They don't need to be addicted to an antidepressant for the rest of their lives or for a long period of time or go through the whole weaning process because of this moment in time where they needed some help.
Are these drugs, I keep reading that they are generally safe physiologically. They're not going to cause a spike in, most of them will not cause a spike in blood pressure or heart rate or anything like that. Are they addictive?
Yeah, so it is super important that people understand that while these are much safer than many, many medicines, these still do need to be treated with respect and caution. So ketamine as an example, again, it's legal. It is physiologically safe for most people. But if the research shows in a medical setting or in under the care of a trained facilitator, it's safe, it's not very addictive. In a recreational setting where you're not controlling dose, you're not controlling administration, yeah, people can get addicted to ketamine. So it's something to be careful of. Things like psilocybin or mushrooms and LSD, there's no lethal dose. And we know there's lethal doses of aspirin. There's the harm to yourself or to others that those other types of classic psychedelics cause are very, very low compared, especially when you compare them to alcohol and tobacco, legal drugs that cause great harm to self and others. But again, it's something just to be aware of. These are strong medicines, and taking them with someone who knows what they're doing and can help guide you, can understand the dose, and make sure you feel safe in your setting is one of the key things to having a successful experience.
Yeah, interesting that you put it that way. Set and setting is how that's often referred to. So walking into a therapy session with clear intentions and preparation. Walk me through what seems to be best practices in that regard.
Yeah, so let's talk about 3 S's: source, set, and setting. So source is, where did your medicine come from? Do you know it's pure? A lot of drugs that are sold in the underground markets are not. They are not. What's sold as MDMA might not have any MDMA in it. So understanding what you're getting and who you're getting it from. So again, if you're buying ketamine from a pharmacy because it's been prescribed by a doctor, that's pure medicine. If you aren't able to do it that way, then having test strips or something at home or using one of the online drug testing services is just a good idea to know that what you're taking is pure. So that's source. The next thing is your set. What is your mindset going in? Do you have a clear intention? Do you understand how this medicine is going to make you feel? Do you understand how long it's going to last? Are you in a framework where you can receive whatever personal knowledge you're going to gain from this journey? And then the third piece is setting. Are you in a place where you're not going to be disturbed, where you have people around you who love you, where you have control over the sound and the lights and the environment so that you're not startling yourself? These medicines can change your perceptions radically. Things that are sounds might appear as colors, and colors might appear as sounds, and just the controlled environment is a really important part of this. So if you control your source, your set, and your setting, the probability of a good experience is very high. And we're seeing that with groups, again, like Johns Hopkins. Those are the things that they're controlling for in their clinical trials, and the outcomes are tremendous.
So I know in the state of Oregon, for example, they are requiring licensure of the therapists, and I have to go to a licensed facility with control on the medications being used. I have to have a specific amount of time in the room, and then I can't drive, and I have to be there so long after. They've done a careful job, it seems at least, of trying to control that set and settings to minimize the negative experience. which is, I think, what a lot of people are curious about. We keep hearing about the bad trip, oh, it was a bad trip, the old 1960s drug thing. What does that entail? What can happen and what can go wrong?
Yeah, so when you talk about a challenging or a bad trip, part of it is the person was taking something that they didn't think they were taking, and that has led to a reaction that they didn't want to have. The second thing that can cause a bad trip is a drug interaction. The person's already on XYZ, and then they took a different medicine, psychedelic or otherwise, and there was a contraindication between those two medicines that led to a bad experience. Trained facilitators, medical professionals, they know what those contraindications are. Whether you do this above ground or below ground, doing some type of medical intake process is pretty important. And making sure that your facilitator has looked at all your medicines and has looked at what they're going to serve you and is saying, okay, there's going to be a challenge or there's not going to be a challenge. Other than that, when we talk about challenging trips, we talk about emotionally challenging trips where something is brought up that's hard, and there might be crying and there might be emotions. Those, while challenging, can still be very positive. Johns Hopkins, again, people who've had challenging experiences would still put this in one of the top 5 or 10 things that have ever happened to them in their entire lives. So a challenging experience can be a good experience. I can just share one personal experience with this. I had inappropriate sexual contact with a family member 10 years older than me when I was a young teenager. And I was mortified, completely embarrassed, tucked it away, didn't ever want to talk about it. And things would happen, and I could feel my cheeks getting red and my ears burning and a pit in my stomach. But I didn't want to even deal with it with this medicine. But strangely, in one of these psychedelic medicine experiences, I was right back in that situation. I was living it again. And one of the things that psychedelic medicine does, it removes shame, blame, and guilt from your perception. So here I am in this experience. I didn't want to be there, but I was. And I could look at this person and say, you know what? I don't have to forgive or condone the actions, but I could see her as a human that was feeling deeply unloved, that was struggling with substance use, that was feeling rejected from her father, was feeling rejected from her friends, was just in an awful, awful place. And again, not forgiving or condoning, but empathizing. And all of a sudden, this thing that I've been carrying around for 30 some years just healed. It just went away. And now I can talk about it without embarrassment. And I kind of think of it as like, wow, that's almost like a miracle. Like it just in one session went away. This thing I've been lugging around. I just can't imagine how many other people are out there that have other things that are traumatic to them that I think they deserve the opportunity to have this type of healing.
Well, let me understand that a little better. So did a facilitator say or do anything during that experience to bring you to that point, or did that just happen and blossom on its own?
It happened and blossomed on its own. So sometimes with psychedelic medicine, the facilitator really, it's not like traditional talk therapy where they have to ask you questions and probe and give opinions. It's more of the medicine goes where it needs to go, is the idea that this is self-healing. It's healing from the inside out. And the facilitator's there in case you need someone to hold your hand, in case you have a logistical issue. I need to use the restroom and you have to walk from point A to point B. They're there if you're feeling really scared and someone needs to put their hand on your shoulder and just say, you are loved, you are okay, and you're safe. And then you can go back into your journey. That's where the facilitator is really important. And they're there, of course, if the normal things of life happen. So people have leg cramps or have different issues every day without being on medicine. The difference is if you're on an illegal substance and those things happen, it's pretty problematic. So a facilitator being there for the normal slip and fall is really helpful. So there's very few things physiologically that are going to happen from the psychedelic medicine itself, but it's the surrounding items and it's the normal body items that happen. If it happens at the same time, having a facilitator there to help you through it is a big deal.
should I select the psychedelic I use based on my expectations of the condition that I'm trying to resolve? Is one better than another for whatever condition?
It's a really interesting question, Lee. So I think it kind of works like this. There are people who say, I'm not doing anything illegal, period. All right, well then if you're going to stay in America, your option's ketamine. So there's your option, and now you're going to go work with ketamine. I'm willing to fly. Great. Well, now you can open up ayahuasca, you can open up psilocybin, you can open up iboga or ibogaine, and you can go to somewhere else and do it legally. I'm willing to do something underground. Well, now you can choose any of the medicines, and what I think people would say is, well, what are you called to? What's interesting? You can read books like mine or books like Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind. And look at what the different medicines do. And you can also see kind of, how much are you willing to commit physically to this? So a ketamine experience, as an example, is about a 1 hour experience. And best practice is you do about 6 of them over 6 weeks and then reevaluate. A psilocybin experience or mushroom experience is 6-7 hours. So it's a longer commitment. An MDMA or MDA, which is a heart opener, that's the one we were talking about with the post-traumatic stress disorder people a moment ago. Again, 6 hours. It could be a 6-hour experience. Ayahuasca, you're typically doing that 2 or 3 nights in a row, and there's a purging experience with that. It's much more physically. Ibogaine would be the last one I'll mention for now. If you have an opioid addiction, or opioid use disorder, this is probably the most powerful medicine for it. And of the psychedelics I've mentioned, it's the most dangerous. So you really need to be in a controlled medical environment for that, and lots of supervision. But it can essentially heal for some people an opioid disorder in a single treatment. It's incredibly powerful.
So I'm home based in the state of Indiana, where everything is still illegal. Marijuana is not even available on a medical basis. Ketamine, I'm sure, as a prescribed therapy. Right. I don't know how that works. Is that going to work? Can you cross state lines? How does that whole process in your telehealth process work?
So ketamine is approved by the FDA. It is legal in all 50 states. So doctors in Indiana can absolutely and do prescribe ketamine to patients. Our particular Happy is not yet in Indiana, but I believe there's some other telemedicine companies that are. And there are definitely ketamine clinics throughout Indiana that can prescribe that. So ketamine is incredibly powerful for people who are looking for an alternative way to heal with, again, depression. Depression and anxiety are the 2 ways that you typically get it prescribed. And then in addition to that desire, it can help with the other things we've talked about, the spiritual connectivity, the connecting to other people, the human optimization components. Ketamine's also been showing there's good research on things like alcohol use disorder. People who have started drinking more than they would have liked to going through the pandemic and want to dial that back, and ketamine can help with that as well.
So what is that? Can you describe for me what ketamine feels like? Is there I think high is the phrase most people would use. Is there a euphoria? Is there, what's going on?
So ketamine's actually not really a euphoria as much as it's a calm. So when you take ketamine, the first thing you'll notice is that your body, you can move your body, but because it's based originally as an anesthesia, everything feels very heavy. You really don't want to move your body. So you can, but you don't want to. You, in many cases, are disassociated from your body. So maybe that looks like you're above your body looking down or to the side of your body, but it's almost like you're having an out-of-body experience. And then everything is very, very calm. For many people, you feel the weight of the world literally lifted off your shoulders. And that's a really good reminder of how much anxiety or weight that people are carrying around with them. That when it lifts, it's like, oh, wow, I haven't felt like this in a long, long time. And then during that experience, many people have kind of a somatic experience where they feel like they're digging down into into a tunnel or into the earth, or dropping into what colloquially is called the K-hole. And not there can be moments of euphoria, there can be moments of sadness, but it's really, for many people, very, very relaxing, very, very calm, very, very peaceful. It's a beautiful feeling.
So again, we don't know why that experience relieves depression when other drugs don't, correct?
We don't know exactly. We know it works in the glutamate system, which is a really important system. We know it increases BDNF in the brain, but no, researchers can't say exactly why this works and something else doesn't. But we do know that research after research after research is showing that, wow, people are having tremendous results without getting addicted to the existing antidepressants that are primarily prescribed today.
And BDNF is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. I've heard that described as kind of a miracle grow for the brain.
That's a great way to say that. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a funny. I will use that. That's a funny line.
If I want to, if I feel like this is something I need to know more about, I want to touch and feel. Who do I talk to about this?
Yeah. So I love that question. I would encourage you to go look up ketamine in your area and see what options are there, and then talk to 2 or 3 different providers that are possible. And what are you looking for? Well, first let's look for cost. It's going to range from, if you're in clinic, $450 to $1,000 per session is pretty normal in America. In telehealth, you're looking at about $1,200 for 6 sessions, so about $200 for your first 6, $200 per session for your first 6. So cost would be one item. The next item is just philosophy. Some clinics believe in it's just a biochemical reaction. So you come in, they put an IV in you, they monitor your vitals, and then they send you on your way. Other clinics believe in kind of more of a holistic approach, that you need to have some preparation, set an intention, then have your medicine in some type of, even if it's medical, but some type of ceremonial process, and then an integration period where you're processing what happened. So those are just 2 different philosophies. Talk with your provider and see which resonates for you. And then I think the third is just check on the experience and how it's delivered. Is it one-on-one? What type of experience does the facilitator have? I personally think group ketamine is really powerful. So I get why people might want to start one-on-one, but there's a collective energy that happens when people are doing this in a group setting that's really fascinating. And back in the 60s, there was a lot of group work done. So this is rekindling old research. But either way, individual is beautiful, group is beautiful. If you're going to use any of the telehealth providers, all the good ones, they provide guides, they provide preparation, integration techniques. They provide oftentimes music playlists and other activities to take place. But just check in, see what they offer. And then see what feels right for you. But every state has doctors in some states, nurse practitioners that can prescribe this. And, but one clinic can be radically different from another. So check with the provider.
And, I come back to this question. It's almost everything that touches healthcare. People are going to wonder, is this covered by insurance?
Yeah, this is the super frustrating part right now. It's not. All of us in the industry are pushing to get as much data as fast as possible and show the insurance companies that this is one, better outcomes for the patient, and 2, it's less expensive in the long run. You're not paying for antidepressants on a daily basis. You're not paying for all the ancillary items that occur with antidepressants, and you're not paying sometimes for the talk therapy with that happens with that. But right now this is out of pocket, which is actually what led to these telehealth companies really pushing for this and saying, you know what, it's not fair that only people who can afford $4,500 to $6,000 can have access to this medicine. So yes, is some people would prefer to have a clinic experience. Others say, you know what, not only am I saving money, I get to do it at the comfort of my own home. I like that. I like that experience. So it's personal choice.
Interesting. Anything I didn't ask you think we need to get across?
I think you've done a great job with these questions. I appreciate it. it is, again, I want to reiterate that not everybody should take a psychedelic, but understanding the reality, that the things that we've been taught for 50 years is wrong, having a reasonable understanding will help make things like ballot initiatives and how our legislatures operate will help get us access to more people faster. The only other thing I would want to bring up is, especially in a state like Indiana, so we have people who are approaching this for medical reasons. We have a lot of people who are approaching this for religious reasons, and that's interesting. I thought we lived in a country that had religious freedom, only to find out that no, not all religions are treated equal. In this case, these have in many societies treated many of these medicines as sacraments for hundreds, if not thousands, of years, and there's a number of people who are saying, no, I don't want to deal with depression or anxiety, but I want to connect to a higher power, and I would like access to this sacrament for that reason. And I think that's just at least something for people to be aware of. That there's a beautiful book called The Immortality Key that came out last year, the year before, that talks about the first 400 years of Christianity and the theory that entheogenic sacraments was a big part of it. So this touches Judaism, it touches Christianity, it touches Islam, touches Hindu. There are a lot of different religions have been touched by these sacraments, as well as, and of course, in the indigenous communities. So just another thing for people to be aware of.
Well, I've enjoyed talking with you. That is Matt Zeman. He's the author of Psychedelics for Everyone. You can learn more at mattzeman.com. And, of course, links will be below and also in the show notes. Matt, enjoyed talking with you. Thanks so much.
Lee, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.